Chapter 17 of Mary's Grammar by Jane MARCET. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Jennifer Dallman. Verbs. Lesson 10. In our former lesson on verbs, when you were a little girl, Mary, said her mother, I taught you the meaning of a verb generally, and explained to you the three kinds of verbs, active, passive, and neuter. Now that you are a great girl, comparatively speaking, she said, smiling, I must teach you the four different modes or manner of expressing a verb. Modes of expressing a verb? Repeated Mary. I cannot understand that without an explanation, Mamma. And I doubt whether you would understand it if I attempted to explain it now. So I think it would be better to wait till you have made some acquaintance with these several modes. They will then be much easier to explain than when they are quite strange to you. I am sure, Mamma, if it is easier for you to explain, it is much easier for me to understand when I know something about them. Then there is nothing so dry and hard as a definition. I think it should always come at the end instead of at the beginning. That may do for children, said her mother, but it would not satisfy grown people, who are able to understand a definition. The pronouns you have lately been learning are a good introduction to verbs, for without the help of persons we could not understand a verb. If I say to write, to talk, to be beaten, you know the meaning of the verb, but you cannot tell who it is that writes, or walks, or is beaten. You are ignorant whether it is one person or many, and whether the person is masculine or feminine. Or neuter, perhaps, Mamma, interrupted Mary, for you know a pen may write, and a carpet may be beaten. Very true, my dear. You see, therefore, that either nouns or personal pronouns are necessary to tell us who it is that acts. The mere name of the verb, with the little word to before it, is called the infinitive mode of the verb, because it defines nothing, and simply expresses the action without saying who did it, or when, or how it was done, as to sleep, to talk, to be tired. Then I think, Mamma, the infinitive mode seems to teach one nothing at all. Little more than the name of the verb, replied her mother. But you will find by and by that it is more useful than you imagine. Well, if instead of saying to write, you say he writes, what does that mean? I know, said Mary, that he is a single person of the masculine gender, and that he is the person who writes. So the little word he points out the person, the number, and the gender. Oh, he tells us a great deal more than to does. I dare say it is another mode, Mamma. It is, replied her mother. But tell me, does not he point out the case also? Yes, he is the nominative case, for he does something. He writes. He comes before the verb, which commands it to be nominative. And does not he writes tell you also the time at which he writes? Inquired her mother. What do you mean, Mamma? Cried Mary, looking surprised. At what o'clock he writes? Oh, no, time in grammar, my dear, said her mother, smiling, does not mean the hour, the day, or the year. He writes means that he is writing now at this present time, whether it is 12 o'clock or 3 o'clock or whatever the hour may be. Yes, to be sure, said Mary. Or whatever day, Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday, or whatever year it may happen to be. He writes always means now. How much more the little word he tells us than the little word to does, for it tells us the person, the number, the gender, the case, and the time. The word he, Mary, does not point out the time. Why, Mamma, you have just said that he writes is now, the present time. That is true. He writes is the present time. But it is the word writes and not the word he that points out the time. The pronoun he is used in all the times. If I say he wrote a letter yesterday, what time is that? That is the time that is past and gone, for yesterday is over and will never come back again. But you see, Mary, that it is the change in the verb from writes to wrote, and not the pronoun he, which points out the past time. And if I say, he shall write tomorrow, what does that mean? Oh, tomorrow is not past and gone, said Mary. It is the time that is to come. It will be here soon, Mamma. Very well. You must remember these 3 times which grammarians call tenses. They are the present time, which is now, the past time, which has gone by, and the future time, which is to come. I ride today. That is the present time. I rode yesterday. That is the past. And I shall ride tomorrow. That is the future. But you say ride for the present and for the future too, Mamma, when you say I shall ride. The verb ride does not change, replied her mother. It is the word shall which points out the future tense. Shall is the sign of the future tense, just as to is the sign of the infinitive mode. But, Mamma, if you say I shall ride next week or next year, it is the time to come as well as tomorrow, is it not? Certainly. I mentioned tomorrow only because I thought it would make the sense clearer to you to point out some particular time. So then, said Mary, all the time that is to come from tomorrow to 100 or even 1,000 years is future time. Yes, from the next minute to all eternity. Oh, what a time, exclaimed Mary, with a long-drawn breath. Forever and forever. It is of all lengths, replied her mother. If you say I shall go in a moment, the future time is not very long. No, indeed, said Mary, laughing. A moment is short enough. But, Mary, I have not yet told you the name of the mode we have been talking of, and I think you are, by this time, sufficiently acquainted with it for me to explain it to you. Oh, yes, said Mary, I know a great deal about it. This mode has all the three persons, both singular and plural, and the three tenses, and I like it much better than the infinitive mode. Pray, what is it called? It is called the indicative mode because it indicates or points out that the verb is positively done, without any condition, hesitation, or objection. But I cannot understand how there can be any other mode of doing a verb, Mamma, for either the verb must be positively done or not done. You cannot do it by halves, can you? I have known people, Mary, who cannot always make up their mind whether they will do a verb or not. For instance, this morning, when Willie was asking you to go and play with him in the garden, you answered, if I go, I shall not have time to finish my work. And then when he continued pressing you to go, you said, I would go if you promised not to keep me long. And he, having agreed to this condition, you said, well then, Mamma, may we go? Oh, but Mamma, I was talking about doing the verb and not positively doing it. True, replied her mother, that was not the indicative mode. But you know, Mamma, I did go with Willie at last, for when you said yes, I put by my work and went directly. That was the indicative or positive mode. And is talking about whether you will do a verb or not another mode, Mamma? Yes, it is, but we have not yet done with the indicative mode. Let me hear whether you can repeat the three tenses or times of the indicative mode in the verb to walk, but use the pronoun I instead of he. Mary looked grave, and after a little thought said, I walk, that is now. I walked, that means the past time. And I shall walk, that is the future. Very well, Mary, but I and he are not the only persons who can walk. In our lesson on pronouns, you may remember, we said that there were three persons singular and as many plural, and each of these persons may be the nominative or agent of the verb, as well as he or I. Oh yes, all the persons can not only walk, but they can run and dance too, said Mary, beginning to skip about. Well, when you have finished dancing yourself, said Mother, suppose that you were to try to repeat the verb to dance. Begin with the first person, I, and go on with those that follow. This seemed to Mary a difficult task, and one that required a good deal of reflection. So she sat down and took some little time to think and recollect who the several pronouns were, and then said, I dance, you dance, he dance. No, it must be he dances, said she, interrupting herself. Yes, replied her mother. The third person singular is dances. Or if it is a woman or a little girl, said Mary, it is she dances. Or if it is a doll or a puppet, added her mamma, it is it dances. And all three are the third person singular. But remember I told you that thou continues to be used by grammarians for the second person singular, though in conversation and in writing we say you in its stead. Now for the plural. Mary repeated, we dance, you dance, they dance. Very well. That is all in the present time. Do you think you can tell me the past time? I must think of some past time, said Mary. Suppose it was yesterday. She then continued, I danced yesterday. Thou dancedst yesterday. He danced yesterday. We danced. You danced. They danced. I mean that they all danced yesterday, Mamma, but there is no use in repeating it every time. You see that I did not forget to say thou instead of you for the second person singular, and then I was forced to say dancedst, else it would not have sounded right. Well, now for the future, or time to come, said her mother. Oh, that will be easy enough, said Mary, for I know the sign of the future is shall, so I will only have to put shall before dance, and go on as I did with the past time. Only take care, Mary, said her mother, smiling, not to put the word yesterday after the verb, as you did in the past tense. Oh, no, it would be a foolish thing to say, I shall dance yesterday. Let me see, what future time shall I choose? It shall be this evening. Then she repeated, I shall dance this evening. Thou shalt dance this evening. He shall dance. We shall dance. You shall dance. They shall dance. All of them this evening. Very well, my dear, said her mother, but I must tell you that there are two words that are signs of the future tense, shall and will. If you say I will dance, it means that you are to dance at some future time also. Then shall and will mean the same thing, Mamma. As signs of the future tense they do, but their meaning is very different in other respects, according as they are placed in the sentence. Of this, I will give you an amusing example. There was a foreigner once in this country who fell into a river, and not knowing how to swim, he was sadly afraid of being drowned. In his distress, he called out, I will be drowned, and nobody shall come and help me. Some country people who were at work in the adjoining field thought it was a joke and began to laugh. But finding by his struggles he was really in want of assistance, they went and got him out of the water. And on coming to an explanation, they found that he had intended to call for assistance, and to say, I shall be drowned, and nobody will come and help me. After Mary had laughed heartily at this anecdote, her mother said that she had learnt enough of the verbs this morning. She desired her to endeavor to remember the 3 tenses of the indicative mode, promising at the next lesson to teach her another mode. Continuation of verbs, Lesson 11. Well, Mamma, said Mary, I cannot think of what the other modes can be besides the infinitive, which tells you so little, and the indicative, which tells you so much. The next mode, answered her mother, is called the subjunctive, because some circumstance or condition is subjoined to it. I will give you an example. For instance, if you ride, the horse will throw you. The condition subjoined to your riding is that the horse would throw you. That is not a very agreeable circumstance. No, indeed, said Mary. Or you might say, continued her mother, if I were to ride, I should be tired. That is not quite so alarming a condition, said Mary. Well, pray go on with your conditions, Mamma. Her mother went on. If he rides, he will be too late for dinner. If we ride, it must be early. If you ride, you may get wet. If they had ridden, they might have enjoyed the fine weather. Well, said Mary, I am glad to hear that there is a pleasant circumstance subjoined at last. The little verbs may, might, should, would, could, her mother told her, were all signs of the subjunctive mode, for they all expressed uncertainty and required an if before them. As, if I may ride, will you lend me your horse? If he knew how to ride, he would not have been thrown. If they should go, they will not be home in time. Oh, Mamma, exclaimed Mary, that was the mode in which I was talking to Willie about going to play with him in the garden. I remember I said, if I should go, and if I may go, and all the little hesitating verbs. And then, you know, Mary, you made your condition that he should not detain you long. And so I did, replied Mary, looking surprised. Well, how could I talk so much about the subjunctive mode without knowing a word about it? Observe, Mary, said her mother, that in this mode the agents do not say that they do ride or have ridden or will ride, as they do in the indicative mode. but that they might or could or would or may under such or such conditions. Yes, mamma, though they talk so much about it, there is not one of them that does ride. I like the indicative mode much the best, for there you positively do ride, or have ridden, or shall ride, without so many ifs to stop you. Now then, you understand the difference between the indicative and the subjunctive modes, said her mother. Oh, yes. In the indicative, all the persons ride, without any condition or anybody trying to prevent them, while the subjunctive is all made up of hesitation and uncertainty. Yes, said her mother, the indicative is the positive mode, the subjunctive the conditional mode. I know what I should call it, mamma. I think it is the uncertain or doubting mode, for they can none of them make up their minds whether they will ride or not. Yet you should not find fault with their hesitation, said her mother, for their riding or not depends often on other people or circumstances rather than on themselves. Then I suppose, said Mary, laughing, the persons in the subjunctive mode are children, who can only do what they are allowed. And then, you know, mamma, it is no wonder there should be so many conditions as to the riding. The subjunctive mode, her mother said, applies quite as much to grown people as to children. A man may say, if you will choose me for your king, I will govern you with wisdom and justice. Or a general may say to his soldiers, if you should disobey my orders, you would be severely punished. Or, mamma, you might say to me, if you are a good girl for a week to come, I should be very much pleased. But the little word if, mamma, is not a verb, is it? No, it is a conjunction which expresses doubt or uncertainty. Other conjunctions are sometimes used in the subjunctive mode as though and that. Thus, if you would say, though he should speak the truth, they would not believe him. I wish that you would lend me a book that I might read. The subjunctive mode may indeed be used without any sign. You may always know it to be a subjunctive when the verb is not positive, but conditional or depending on some other circumstance. I will give you the subjunctive mode of the verb to dance. I may, or might, or should, would, or could. Thou mayest. He may. We may. You may. They may. Dance. If you would let me. Or if anything else, said Mary, as if I choose, or if I go to the ball, or if I have a partner. Well, Mary, I think we have had enough of the ifs now. So let us proceed to the last mode, which is called the imperative. It commands and forbids, as, come here, learn your lesson, go away. Oh, what a tone of authority this mode has, said Mary. You need not be in great awe of it, however, Mary, for besides commanding, it also begs and entreats. Beggars speak in this mode when they say, pray give me a halfpenny, and children when they ask pardon and say, forgive me. What a strange mode, cried Mary, at one time to order and command, and at another to beg and pray. But, mamma, are there no persons in this mode, no pronouns? Oh, yes, returned her mother, the same as in other modes. This is the imperative mode. Let me dance. Let us dance. Dance thou? Dance you? Let him dance. Let them dance. How odd, said Mary. Dance thou and dance you? People never say so in talking, mamma. No, replied she, it is used only in religious books or poetry when the language is very elevated. In familiar speaking or writing, you say dance, write, speak. But then how is it known which of the three persons is meant? The person who speaks is, you know, always the first person and the person spoken to the second. When you say dance, you speak to the person whom you bid to dance. The pronoun you, therefore, though not mentioned, is understood, and it is only in the second persons, both singular and plural, that the pronoun is not used. It was your saying, come here, give me a halfpenny, without using any pronoun, that made me think there were no persons to this mode. It is curious, said her mother, that illiterate people speak most grammatically in this mode, for they say, go you away, get you gone. They learn grammar by ear, and make the verbs more regular than they really are. I have now explained to you the four modes of the verb. Do you remember their names and meaning? Oh, yes, said Mary. First comes the infinitive mode, which means nothing at all except the name of the verb, with the little word to before it, as to speak, to write. But Mary, if it is a very desirable thing to have a mode which points out so much as the indicative mode does, it is also very convenient to have a mode which expresses only the name of the verb. If I say, she will learn to read, there are in that sentence 2 verbs, learn and read. The first is in the indicative mode, she will learn, and tells you that the nominative she is of the third person, singular number, feminine gender, and will learn marks the future tense. Oh, how much is said in those 3 little words, exclaimed Mary. Well then, the second verb, to read, does nothing more than to name the verb, which is all that is required, for as we know it is the same person who will both learn and read. It would be a loss of time and of words to point out all these circumstances over again. So you see, Mary, that when there are 2 verbs with the same nominative, it is very convenient to have so short a mode of expressing the second verb as the infinitive is. It is indeed, said Mary. I will try to find out 2 verbs with the same nominative. You have done it already, my dear. Try to find are 2 verbs, the first in the indicative, the second in the infinitive mode. That was found out by chance, said Mary, but now I will try to find out one by thinking, and after a little reflection, she said, I should like to eat. Observe, Mary, said her mother, I should like is not the indicative, but the subjunctive mode. But the infinitive follows it equally well, as the subjunctive mode points out the person, number, and so on. But that little word to puzzles me, Mamma. It is the sign of the infinitive mode, but it is a preposition, not a verb. When it is used as a sign of the infinitive mode, replied her mother, you must consider it as forming part of the verb, for it is not used in the sense of the preposition before the noun. When you say to a house or to a man, it means approaching or going to a house or a man. But when to is used as a sign of the infinitive mode, as to write, to read, to dance, it means doing something, not approaching anything. Now tell me, what is the next mode? The indicative, said Mary, which is the wisest and means the most of them all, for it speaks positively and without hesitation. Then it has 3 tenses and 3 personal pronouns, both singular and plural. In short, in that mode the verb is done completely. Then follows the subjunctive mode, or as I call it, the doubting mode, which has all the persons the same as in the indicative mode, but they do not get on half so well. They each declare that they would do the verb, if they could, or would, or might. It is always future time with them, I think, Mamma, continued Mary, laughing, for as they never do the action, there is no present time, and as they never did the action, there can be no past time either. Grammarians, however, contrive to make both a past and a future time in this mode, but it is not necessary to trouble you about them. Well, said Mary, the last is the imperative mode, which is sometimes so haughty and commanding, and at other times so humble and subservient. You have described the modes in your own way, Mary, said her mother, which, though not very elegant, or perhaps very accurate, shows me that you understand them pretty well. In speaking or writing, you must always take care that the verb agrees with the noun or pronoun in person and number, and not say as some illiterate people do, I likes fruit, they lives in London. Oh, no, Mamma, I knew that before I learned grammar, by the sound, but now I know the reason of it. It is not the first person singular, but the third person that ends in S. He likes and he lives. Much more grammar, said her mother, is learned by ear than we are aware of, but it is not always correct. End of chapter 17.